All right, here we are. Welcome to the Ask Abhijit Show, episode 279. I hope everyone's doing great, fantastic, awesome. We're going to discuss geopolitics today. It's a geopolitics only live stream, and it's going to be a super chat live stream. So let's see who all is there on the live chat with us. I can see Sagar Thorat, Abir Tulli, Engineer Apurva, Rayyan, who's preparing for JE mains, Binit, Negro, Supriya Topre, Swami Jain, Shashank Kaushik, Jai Shri Krishna, Mystic SK Jai Shri Krishna, Suhas Reddy, Mrityunjay Kalita, Shashank Kaushik once again, Avinash, Board Soul, Jaideep Singh Parmar, good evening, Engineer Sagar Thorat, Ayush Singh, Ajinkya Pawar from Mumbai, Abir Tulli, Supriya Thopri again, Negro, Shivam Singh, Aboard Soul, Happy Janmashtami, Degenerate States. All right. All right. Sagar Thorat, Rahul Lakshmanan, Animals for Laugh, Devotee, Geopolitical Dubey from Indore. Who else do we have? Vladimir Putin says Jai Shri Ram. Well, Jai Shri Ram back to you, sir. Sonia Sinha, Gravity Kaha Hai, Savaria Seth, Vikash PJ McLevin from Hawaii, Ashna John, Aninda Bhattacharji, Sasmith, Superhero, Shanks, Anurag Jha, Ketan Desai, Superhero, Vikash, Ashna John, Abhinav Negi, Miscellaneous, Nihao, all right. Shiva Sai, Vishal Gohil, Harsh Nayan, Chetan, Aradhya, Suhas, Tushar SK, Snaps. Okay. Megha, Thas, Rita Upadhyaya, Beneath Dheeraj Kamath, Anant Singh, Jay Dikshit. Hola amigos, says Amit Kumar. Amisha Mishra, good evening. Kaha Gravity. Naveen Rai, Anonymous. Abir Sujata Saha from Singapore. Well, good evening, ma'am. Rahul Love Travel Guru, Ataj Singh, and so many other people. Light Yagami, Aditya Punit Kumar, Arun Prasad, Jay Dikshit, Abhimanyu Thakur, Rehana Noor, and so many else, so many other people. All right. Let's go. Let's get going with the questions. Otherwise, I'll be doing this all day. Let's get going with the questions. What questions do we have? Let's go with the first question, which is by Kshatriya Ball. What are your thoughts on the sinking Western economies? New Zealand has got massive unemployment problem, and people keep losing their jobs. The blame is being put on the crazy spending done during COVID. Well, yeah, interesting that you mentioned COVID here. So let's take the example that you're mentioning, New Zealand, small nation, right, off the southeast coast of Australia, right? Two large islands. I mean, two islands mainly, pretty small nation. What's the economy of New Zealand like? What does it depend on? Well, if I think of it, I can think of agriculture and sheep. Yeah, sheep and agriculture. And secondly, tourism. Apart from that, what's the New Zealand economy going to depend on? I'm not really sure what else it has, what other components it has. So there are these two things: agriculture and tourism, including animal agriculture. Now, COVID, you had all this crazy spending and you had all these measures that essentially tourism died out for a while in New Zealand because of COVID. And I suppose there must have been a lower demand for other products. So that would have brought the economy down. I suppose it went into a recession, at least for some time. I'm not sure what the current situation is like. So that explains why New Zealand's economy is not doing so great. Maybe low productivity, maybe other factors also may be there. So that's the example of New Zealand. Australia, I suppose, may be doing better. I mean, Australia is not actually part of the West, but yeah, politically it's part of the West. If you look at nations like Germany, etc., well, we know what's going on there. Germany historically has been the economic engine that drives manufacturing engine, economic engine that drives the European economy. And for an economy to do well, you need a copious amount of constant uh, energy, cheap energy. And when cheap Russian gas stops flowing into Germany and they shut down their nuclear reactors, well, things are going to go bad. So, multiple issues depending on which nation we are talking about. COVID was obviously a big factor in things going down. I mean, for a while, even India's economy went backwards because of COVID. right? But we restarted everything as soon as it was possible. Western countries seem to have made some changes permanent, and they may be doing some things that are not good for them. For example, Germany shutting down all its nuclear power plants. I mean, why on earth would you do that? Why? So what? You're gonna go back to coal? I think that's what they've done. So multiple reasons depending on which economy we're talking about. And yeah, New Zealand apparently has massive unemployment, people losing their jobs. Well, that's terrible. So what can New Zealand do to to re-kickstart its economy? I suppose they need to focus on tourism more, attract more people into the country, maybe find more buyers for their agricultural produce and whatnot. Yeah, that sort of thing they need to do. uh, COVID was definitely a factor, but I don't think every Western economy is sinking. The US is doing okay, I suppose. I'm not sure about the UK. Overall, they're okay. Some of them, and some of them are not doing very well. I don't think any of them is really sinking as such. I don't know how many nations are in recession right now, if there are any. But overall, yeah, that's the situation. I think the future obviously is in the East. The future is in Asia. It's in India and China and other countries in the region, and that's why the West is, well, throwing whatever tantrums it is, Trump's tariffs and whatnot. Okay, SFC says, will this current tariff war between the US and essentially the rest of the entire world eventually result in global recession? If so, how badly will it affect India? So, will this cause a global recession? I don't think it's going to cause a global recession. It's going to cause a lot of pain to nations that have historically depended on, exporting to the US. Now the US is going to impose these restrictions, at least as long as Trump is around. And maybe those things may become a little permanent if this continues for long. It's possible, but but these policies that Trump is employing, they're going to force other countries, essentially the rest of the world, to look for alternatives beyond the US. That is what it's going to cause. So a nation like India will look at other markets. A nation like whoever else, whichever nations are have historically been exporting goods to the US, will be forced to look at alternative markets. It's going to cause a realignment, a reshaping of the global economic order. I don't think it's necessarily going to cause a global recession. I think the chances of that are low. How badly will this affect India? Well, I think uh, it could lower India's GDP growth for the next year by 0.2 to 0.4%. So the RBI, I believe, had forecast that the Indian GDP will grow at about 6.5% next year. So if it's 0.2% reduction, it'll, instead of 6.5%, the growth will be 6.3%. And if it's a 0.4% reduction, then, well, it could be 6.1%. If yep. So that sort of thing. So it's definitely not trivial. It's going to have an effect. It's not going to be a good effect, and yeah, we're going to have to take measures to take all of this into consideration. Okay, Rahul Lakshmanan says, probability estimate of India and China resolving border once and for all, taking advantage of the current situation. The probability of that happening is about 1%. Okay, not going to happen. What it means is it's incredibly unlikely to happen. Why would a nation like China give up such a big advantage it has? It's much more powerful than India, isn't it? Economically as well as militarily. And it has this so as the more powerful nation, you are in a position to put a nation that's weaker than you, under pressure, under multiple kinds of pressure. And how do you do that? Well, if you have this big, long, tremendous, massive, undemarcated border, then you can keep on claiming territory and keep on testing the strength of the adversary, keep on attempting to salami slice territory. Why would you give that up, right? Unless you're getting something significant in return. What does China get in return? If it agrees to demarcate the border, it gets peace. Well, India has anyway never been a nation that's threatened to take parts of Chinese occupied territory. We have never threatened that we will retake Tibet. I mean, liberate Tibet or whatever. So China doesn't fear an Indian incursion. China doesn't fear an Indian invasion, but it wants India to keep fearing a military conflict with China, right? So when you are in that position where you have the advantage in that, why would you give it up? So even if there is a better relationship between India and China, China will not agree to demarcate the border unless it is in some very precarious position and it desperately needs India's support and help and all that. In that case, it may do that. Well, it's not in that situation right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to be in that sort of situation anytime soon. So my probability estimate of India and China resolving the border issue once and for all is 1% over the next 365 days. Yeah. So what will happen? What's the best case? The best case is, see, tomorrow Mr. Wang Yi is visiting India. Okay, he's gonna be here for, maybe he's gonna be in Delhi for a day or two. After that, he's going to Pakistan, Afghanistan, wherever. He's going, he has his, yeah, so that's our visit. So this visit by Mr. Wang Yi, who's the foreign minister of China, it's obviously a precursor to Mr. Modi's visit to China for the SCO summit. That visit will be at the end of this month, 31st of August, or somewhere around that time. You can look it up. So Mr. Wang Yi will be in Delhi to lay the groundwork for a successful visit for Mr. Modi in China. That's what it is. And obviously, there's going to be a continuation of the hundreds of rounds of negotiations about the border issue and all that. That's a never-ending merry-go-round. Nothing ever comes out of it. So that's where we are. What's the best thing that could happen? Mr. Modi will probably have a pleasant visit to China. Maybe something constructive may come out of it, and maybe China may try to engage India economically and offer some kind of offerings, something like that. But beyond that, I don't see anything major coming out of it. So that's where we are. Okay. Aninda Bhattacharjee says, very big fan. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Please give your insights on the recent developments between Russia and the US. Will Trump punish India? Well, we're talking about Russia and US, so we'll keep India out of it for a moment. Okay, I'll talk about India as well. So, Russia and the US. So, a couple of days ago, Mr. Trump hosted Mr. Putin in Alaska. Oh, excuse me. So Mr. Trump hosted Mr. Putin in Alaska. Mr. Putin arrived in Alaska, and it was a reasonably brief meeting, like 2.5, 3 hours. That's the amount of time the two leaders and their entourages had uh, in face-to-face talks behind closed doors. And beyond the optics are wonderful. Red carpet treatment, and both the leaders traveling in Mr. Trump's limousine, and the fighter planes and the B-2 bomber, strategic bomber that flew over the head of Mr. Putin. All of that stuff. That's all the optics. Mr. Trump's handshake, in which he pulls the other guy's hand towards him and then pats the back of the hand. All of that is nice. Okay, it's all symbolism. Blah blah blah. I don't care about that. Let's talk about the real substance. What came out of it? Right? What was the minimum that Mr. Trump expected? The minimum that Mr. Trump expected was a ceasefire, even a temporary ceasefire, some kind of ceasefire. That's the least that he expected from the visit. That's what he wanted from Mr. Putin. A ceasefire. Ukraine war, obviously. Right? Did he get that? He didn't get that. He got nothing from Mr. Putin. He got absolutely nothing. The two sides were behind closed doors for about 2.5 hours. And the expressions were very different after those 2.5 hours. Before both the leaders went in, both leaders were nice, smiling, and happy. Good body language. When both leaders come out, Mr. Putin is good. Mr. Trump is a little deflated. What happened behind closed doors? Right? Mr. Trump did not get what he wanted. So the least he wanted was a ceasefire. Now we don't know what happened, what demands Mr. Putin made, what demands Mr. Trump made. But you have to understand what position both leaders are in. Who is in a position of strength? Who's in a position of weakness? We have to understand that. Who's in a position of strength? There's a war going on, and the leader who is in possession, who is in occupation of the adversary's territory, is Mr. Putin. The war is going well for Mr. Putin. Right? Ukraine isn't winning. Ukraine is losing. Ukraine doesn't control an inch of Russian territory. Mr. Putin controls about between a fifth and a fourth of Ukrainian territory, and his armed forces are doing well. Ukraine is being decimated. Ukraine's economy is in shambles. The moment foreign aid stops to Ukraine, Ukraine will collapse. Right? It's entirely dependent on foreign aid, on Western aid. Its population, its demography has collapsed. All the young men are gone. That's the situation in Ukraine. Ukraine is a Western proxy, an American proxy, and Putin is doing well. So Mr. Putin is in a position of strength, and he is happy to wait as long as it takes for the war to be over. He is in no hurry for the war to end. His economy is doing well. His economy is actually growing compared to the European economies that are going down, recession. Not all, but at least some of them for some time were in recession. If you compare the Russian economy with the European economies, the Russian economy is doing good. Then what position is Mr. Putin is in a position of strength. What position is Mr. Trump in? He is waging this war of tariffs in the entire world. He is not popular anywhere right now. Trust me. I think we can all agree on that. The tariffs are going to start biting at his own citizens because the American citizens are paying the tariffs, not the foreign countries. It's going to cause a backlash in the US. Prices will go up, inflation will rise. It's not going to be a good time for Mr. Trump. Apart from that, Mr. Trump has made this promise. As a leader, as a politician, you've got to keep promises that you make. Otherwise, people don't forget that. Mr. Trump had made this promise that I will end the Ukraine war on the first day of my presidency. Well, he's been trying for that. He's been attempting to do that, but it's dragging on and on and on. So who's under pressure? Who is in a position of weakness? Mr. Trump is in a position of weakness. So you have Mr. Putin, who is in a position of strength. He is confident. He is not impressed by all the fancy stuff that Mr. Trump is showing him, the fighter planes and all that. He doesn't care. Mr. Putin has his own stuff. So Mr. Putin is in a position of strength. Mr. Trump is in a position of weakness. He is desperate to get at least something out of this. He wants a ceasefire desperately. It's overdue by more than 6 months now for Mr. Trump. So who needs the ceasefire? Who needs something? Mr. Trump. And Mr. Putin is happy to wait as long as it takes for a ceasefire. If we don't get good terms, we will not have a ceasefire. Right? So that was the dynamic, first of all, the power dynamic. And we don't know what happened behind closed doors, but when you saw both leaders emerge, Mr. Trump looked deflated. Mr. Putin looked great. And Mr. Putin, in his address to the media, he made it very clear what his nation's red lines are. That the European security architecture has to take into account Russia's red lines and Russia's security interests, national interests. Without that, Europe, it won't work, right? And I don't know what address Mr. Trump gave to the media. I heard it, but he had nothing of substance to say. So that is the recent developments. So Mr. Trump got nothing out of it. There will most likely be more rounds of negotiations, possibly between the two leaders. The next time, it has to be in Russia. It has to be in Russia. It has to be in Moscow, like Mr. Putin insisted, essentially, right, publicly. And let's see how it goes. But Mr. Trump is not getting what he wants. Yeah, he has been rebuffed, and very nicely so. Will Trump punish India? Well, let him do that. Yeah, he has been threatening 500% tariffs. I mean, it was Lindsey, whatever. Senator Lindsey Graham, who has threatened this, who has brought in this bill that would punish nations that buy Russian oil with 500% tariffs. After a point, the tariffs don't matter anymore. Make it 3 million%, right? We don't care anymore. We're done. So that's the situation. Will Trump punish India? Maybe he will raise tariffs to 70%, maybe 100%, maybe 150%, maybe to 500%. After a point, it doesn't matter. It's possible this may happen. Yeah, they have cancelled the visit of the US trade delegation to India, which was supposed to come soon. Okay, so be it. Right? So that's where we are, and we are purchasing more Russian oil, apparently. Yeah. So that is the current situation, and we'll have to keep an eye on this. We'll have to wait and watch and see how it goes. I expect that India-US relations are fried for some time, for the longest time now. Chandra, well, thank you so much. Welcome to the membership. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Ritik Pawar says, how does China see the Alaska visit? Has China lost leverage on Russia? Well, this visit by Mr. Putin was, well, great for Russia. Yeah, it was great for Russia, and the whole world will see Russia as a much more powerful entity today after the meeting, after the outcome of the meeting, which was clearly 1-0. Putin 1, Trump 0, clearly. Uh, does this mean that China has lost its leverage on Russia? No, it doesn't mean that. Russia will feel better. Russia will be more confident. Trump will be more desperate after this. He will be looking for someone to lash out at, somebody to blame. Maybe it's Zelensky, maybe it's India, maybe whoever. Yeah. But China has not lost its leverage on Russia because Russia is still under all these sanctions, and the US has excluded Russia, cut Russia off from the international economic system, and so on. So Russia is still very dependent on China in a variety of ways. So China hasn't lost that leverage, but we'll see. Yeah, if Russia can get a deal from the US, or if Trump can get a deal, can negotiate a deal with Mr. Putin, which is beneficial for both sides, then yeah, then China will lose some leverage if that happens. And Mr. Trump will be cognizant of that, perhaps, if he, yeah, looks at it that from that perspective. And maybe he doesn't want Putin to lose his dependence on China. So it's complicated. But as of now, China has not lost its leverage on Russia. Okay, what this video WTV says: how does a currency work? Can we use gold reserve as a reference? Okay, how does a currency work? A currency is a substitute for something valuable. That's what it's a proxy. A currency is a proxy for something of value. So in the past, there used to be the barter system, like thousands of years ago. I have 2 carrots. I want your apple. 2 carrots, I say, is equal to 1 apple, but you say no. 1 apple should be 3 carrots, and so there's a negotiation. Maybe I will give you 1 carrot, and I'll take 1/4 of your apple. That sort of thing. Or I have a handful of wheat. What can you offer me in return? Okay, I'll give you a handful of wheat. You give me a cup of ghee. Yeah, that sort of thing. So it used to be this rough reference system long ago, thousands of years ago. Then people started issuing coins usually were made of gold. If you look at ancient Indian coins, most of these are gold coins. Small coins, big coins, whatever size. And gold obviously is an extremely rare commodity, so it is very valuable. So kings used to, and emperors and dynasties and empires started issuing coins of specific denominations, so specific sizes, with a specific amount of gold, and the gold itself was valuable. Uh, so the coins began to be used as a substitute for the barter system. So a coin would be determined by the market to have a certain value. Let's say I have a gold coin. Maybe I can buy 20 cows with that. Yeah. Or maybe I can buy a certain amount of land with that, or whatever it was. So that's how a currency started working. Eventually, in the West, in Europe, they started issuing paper currencies. Paper currencies were a substitute for gold, on which on those paper currencies it was written that this is to be used in exchange for gold. And when the bearer of this note demands a certain amount of gold equal to this, it has to be provided on demand, right? So it was then easier to carry around than gold. So then people started, but the issuer of that paper currency, I suppose, was legally bound to have that much, the amount of currency they've issued, that much gold they should have. Only then would a bank or an issuer of currency be trusted by the consumers. So that's how a currency works. And then eventually in the 20th century, the US, so when the US dollar became the reserve currency of the world, it was pegged to the price of gold. And the US was supposed to have that much gold in storage, equal to the amount of currency was US dollar currency was in circulation globally. But in the 70s, I think it was Nixon and Kissinger, Nixon, who decoupled the US dollar, the paper, from the gold. It was now free floating. It was not dependent on the amount of gold because of a bank run on the US. That's a whole different story. We'll not go into the history. And today, the US currency I don't know what it represents. It's a fiat currency. It's a currency that represents the power of the US. to enforce the US dollar as the world reserve currency. So, that's how a currency works. Can we use gold reserve as a reference? Well, the Indian rupee is also, I don't think it's tied to the price of gold. But it would be ideally good if currencies were tied to a certain amount of to the price of gold. That would be that's a more robust currency, I would say. Amisha says, do you really think that Trump can stop the Ukraine Russia war? It doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like that. I mean, he's been desperate to do it, right? But so many factors are conspiring to come in his way. First of all, Putin is in no hurry to end the war. Why should he? You people started this. He will tell the West, you people started this. You did not respect our red lines. And then eventually you encroached into Ukraine itself, right? That's why we had to take, first of all, Crimea, and then you did it further by by various means, and that's why the war started. Now I am in no hurry to end the war. I am doing very well. Russia is doing very well, right? So if you want an end to the war, it has to be on my terms. I'm going to make maximalist demands. You either do what I say or the war continues. And well, the West may be tempted perhaps to stop funding the war because you're burning your money. But then the whole of Ukraine goes. So that's the tight spot that the West is in. And Zelensky, who is propped up by the EU, well, if the war ends, what happens to him? So he's desperate for the war not to end. So all of these factors are coming in the way to prevent the war from ending. So I don't think that Trump is in any position unless he does something about Zelensky to end the war. Yeah. Harsh Nayan says, one thing India has to be careful about China is based on previous patterns. They have always tried to be aggressive whenever it's thing doing good. Which thing doing good? So China has historically been a very aggressive nation. We know that. 1962 is a good example. 2020, the Galwan clash. Well, that was perhaps accidental. Perhaps they tried to push too far, but they got a bloody nose. See, the Galwan clash is not something that's comparable to the 1962 war or the 1967 war. No one knows about 1967, right? Which we won. Or the 1987 clashes. The Galwan thing was much more one off and much more localized. But China has always been this hegemonic nation, right? Ever since the Chinese Communist Party came to power, they have always been this hegemonic nation. In the past, also, they've always tried to bully weaker nations, going back 2,000 years, right? So we have to be careful about China. And what China respects is strength, and what and if you are weak, they're going to take advantage of that. So I agree with you, sir. We have to be careful about China. You can never trust a nation that with whom you have this sort of history. You have to understand what kind of behavioral patterns they have exhibited in the future. Even if there is a détente, even if there is a rapprochement with China, and things are good in the future, let's say, still India will always have to be super careful when dealing with China. So I agree. Yes, sir. Rohan Suneja says, how can Russia be stronger militarily than China, despite having a smaller economy than China, as per my power index? Please explain. Okay. The economy is smaller. See, the power index that I have, it's based on publicly available information, completely public information, no hidden variables. So what kind of publicly available information do we have? What data, what numbers do we have that can define a country, represent a country? First is your land area. Your land area is a big factor in your power because that is the amount of resources that you have at your disposal. Secondly, population. The more your population, the more resources, manpower, human capital. That is two things, very simple, that everybody understands. Then the size of your economy, which is your GDP, annual GDP. Let's take that as an indicator of the size of your economy and the strength of your economy, annual GDP. Then your annual military expenditure. So you always take the latest figures. Well, the latest figures are that Russia's military expenditure annually is in excess of $100 billion now. It's gone way past India and other nations. So It's the third largest military spend. It's got the third largest military spending in the world, Russia. So that's another factor. Then you look at things like power projection capabilities, which is kind of it's more of an art than a science to calculate that. But yeah, it's certainly something that matters. And then the number of nuclear warheads that you have. So you take all of this together, you calculate a score based on a formula, which is my formula. Well, and that applies to all nations. Russia clearly comes out on top. I mean, the major differentiator is the number of nuclear weapons. And I am not basing the nuclear number of nuclear weapons on my imagination. I'm just taking what is the publicly available figures out there, the best accepted figures, which says India has what, in 160 or whatever. So, and China has 600, and Russia has the world's largest nuclear arsenal. Well, that itself makes Russia invincible, the nuclear arsenal, right? Because nobody will dare to mess with Russia. Do you understand? So if you take all the factors together and you calculate the score, well, Russia turns out to be stronger. Now, that's the best I can explain. Okay, Tanmay Deshpande says Pakistani media said that they lost 155 soldiers during Operation Sindoor, yes, the 3-day war. But then they deleted the article. Yeah, it's been deleted. I mean, so do you think another battle take place after Munir's threat? Okay, let's deal with the issue of the 155 soldiers. So recently, like 2 or 3 days ago, the Pakistani military announced that they have given various gallantry awards and whatever awards uh, to their personnel, military personnel, based on their performance in their Operation Banyan Manhus or whatever it was. Yeah, which is Operation Sindoor. And they put out a list of all the soldiers who were given these awards, and in that list of soldiers, you had 155 deceased soldiers who died in Operation Sindoor, right? So they published the entire list nicely, properly, very nicely, yes, nicely. And then the India has this gigantic population, and people are very active on social media. So Indians caught it, and they took screenshots and pasted it all over social media. So then the Pakistanis realized that we are admitting what happened. We are admitting that we lost 155 soldiers. So they hastily deleted that article, but well, the screenshots will live forever. So, yep, it's clear that Pakistan, it suffered tremendous casualties. 155 soldiers. So that's the ones who have got those gallantry awards. I don't know how many other soldiers there could have been that may have died. We don't know that for sure. Um, so yeah, that's the deal. They admitted it, then they realized what they did, so they deleted that. Now, do I think another battle will take place after Munir's threat? Well, I think there's a chance that there could be a new India-Pakistan war soon. The US is backing up Pakistan to the hilt. Trump is backing Pakistan to the hilt, right? And it looks like the US is now taking the containment of India very seriously. They don't want India to become a $10 trillion economy. Forget about 20, 15, 20, whatever. They don't want India to reach the $10 trillion economy mark. That's why these sanctions, I mean, not sanctions, tariffs on India, and all the hostile behavior from Trump, and Trump backing Pakistan thoroughly, clearly taking Pakistan's side against India. Um, and now the Pakistanis have some idea of their strategic and tactical military weaknesses against India. They took a thorough beating against India. So they would have done a proper assessment and given a laundry list of things they want to the US. And the US will try and supply Pakistan with whatever Pakistan needs to ensure a favorable outcome in the next war. So it's very likely that the US will supply Pakistan with uh, whatever Pakistan was missing during Operation Sindoor. And the longer we go without a war with Pakistan, the stronger Pakistan will get. So I think it's possible. I think it's likely that in the coming months, or not in the short term future, maybe next 12 months, there could be another war instigated by a larger power between India and Pakistan. The objective is to weaken India militarily and to weaken India economically, especially economically. India's economy is the only major economy that is, well, that has no chance of recession next 20 years. And if that continues, India's economy will, no matter what kind of tariffs Trump imposes, India's economy will do well and will grow and will become more powerful. So the best way to damage a nation's economy is to drag it into a prolonged conflict, a Ukraine kind of situation, right? And for India, the best Ukraine is Pakistan. So it's I think likely that there could be in the short term future another conflict with Pakistan. Saitija Reddy says key agreements between Trump and Putin. Any guess? Zero. Zero agreements. If there was any agreement, even a shred of an agreement, Trump would have shouted it from the rooftops. Trump would have shouted it from the rooftops, and he would have said, "See, this is one more feather in my cap. Now I definitely need Nobel Peace Prize." He's desperate for a Nobel Peace Prize. He's craving a Nobel Peace Prize, right? So he wants more examples to bolster, more achievements to bolster his claim on a Nobel Peace Prize. If there was anything that came out of the meeting, which would have been favorable to the US, he would have been shouting it from the rooftops. Absolutely nothing happened. Okay, P. Call says, should India build an alliance with Cyprus, Armenia, and Greece to counter Pakistan, Azerbaijan, Turkey? Well, we are already doing that, by the way. We are already doing that. Mr. Modi recently visited Cyprus. I'm talking about southern Cyprus, free Cyprus, not the northern part, which is Turkish occupied Cyprus. Would you like to see? Let's open the map. It's been 37 minutes. We haven't opened the map, so let's go. Let's take a look at Cyprus. So Cyprus, it is located in the Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean. Okay, this is the island of Cyprus. It's historically always been a Greek island. In the 1970s, Turkey invaded Cyprus and occupied the northern third of the land. And as you can see, there are these dashed lines, and there's this no man's zone, no man's land kind of thing. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, and the capital city Nicosia itself is divided into a southern part and a northern part. So Cyprus is under Turkish occupation, and Turkey, as we know, is a great supporter of Azerbaijan, and these two nations together want to erase Armenia from the map of the world. Armenia is a nation with whom we've had ancient ties, uh, and Turkey is a major supporter of Pakistan in a variety of ways. So India, we know that we have military cooperation, significant military cooperation with Greece. That's been going on for quite some time. I mean, a couple of years at least. Serious military cooperation. India is one of the nations that supplies arms to Armenia. Very dangerous, very powerful weapons. Right, we have been supplying to Armenia, and now Mr. Modi recently visited Cyprus, and it was by all accounts an excellent meeting. And so, what India is doing is India is essentially creating an alliance with Cyprus, Armenia, and Greece. So, what you're suggesting, well, we are already doing that, but it's a great suggestion, and I have to commend you on that. So, yeah, it's an anti-Turkey alliance. That's what it is, and we are doing that. Geopolitical Dubai says, does climate affect geopolitics? If it does, how? Well, look, climate can affect geopolitics only if it changes very rapidly. Otherwise, climate is like a constant factor. Africa, Northern Africa, temperate. So the Saharan part of Africa, the Sahel region, hot and dry. Kalahari Desert, hot. Southern Africa, cool. We know that the coastal regions, so and so. The interior parts of Africa, the tropical rainforests, tropical climate. If we talk about India, depending on where you're in India, we know what the climate is. So if you are, let's say, going to do a military expedition or operation somewhere in whatever part of the world, you have to know exactly what the climatic patterns are, and that does affect the kind of a military operation and military strategies and tactics you can employ. And beyond the military realm, if you just talk about the economic realm, well, climate affects the nation's economy, obviously. Um, Based on what resources you have and the climate, your economy can take various shapes and forms, and that, of course, affects the nation's politics, the nation's culture. So climate has a profound effect on the evolution of history, right? So it does affect history and what is history? What we call history is was once the geopolitics of that time, and the geopolitics of today is tomorrow's history. So climate does indeed affect geopolitics. Vishal says, if peace talks fail, will US breach Russian red lines? Well, they can't afford to. They can't afford to, otherwise they risk nuclear war, right? Russia has very clear red lines, and Russia's nuclear doctrine has changed a bit in the preceding couple of years, 2 3 years, and it's become a little more ambiguous than before. And yeah, so if they cross certain lines, they and actually they did cross some Russian red lines. That what's that Operation Spiderweb that Ukraine undertook, carrying out long range strikes on Russian strategic assets deep inside Russia, that actually did breach some red lines. But the major red lines, if the US breaches, even if peace talks fail, if you breach those red lines, you're inviting a tremendous amount of trouble. I don't think the US dares do that. Satellite says, why are India Russia ties always strong? Will they remain so? Are India and Russia the most reliable long term partners among major countries? If yes, why? So, historically, if you look at the overall trajectory of the ties, it's been pretty good. I mean, the strongest partner India has had, essentially. Yep. For various reasons. So, in the 20th century, India decided to become a Soviet vassal, essentially. Right? Technically, we were non-aligned. I know some geniuses will come and now lecture me that what vassal, we were non-aligned. If all you do is read your history textbooks and listen to what your teachers say, then you will never learn a thing. India was basically a Soviet satellite in the 20th century. And because of that, that's why the US decided to make Pakistan their vassal, right? And strengthen that relationship. But the kind of vassal relationship the US has with its vassals is very damaging in the long run to those vassals. When the USSR and Russia has vassals, they that relationship isn't that damaging. Obviously, they will spy on the nation and do things, etc. But they don't try to change the culture. They don't try to change the various aspects of governance and so on in the vassal countries. So for some time, India was a Soviet vassal. Okay. Um, but the USSR supplied India with excellent weapons. I mean, the MiG 21, when it was supplied to India, was the deadliest fighter aircraft in existence. Okay. And the MiG 25, is it Foxbat? What I mean, they supplied the best weapons to India. And they never laid down conditions and inserted kill switches and backdoors and whatnot, the kind of things the Americans do. And when India needed Soviet help in 1971, the Soviets came to India's help. And that's why Bangladesh was created. So it's been a relationship that's been very robust. It's a trusting relationship. India and Russia understand each other very well because of the long duration of the relationship. When the USSR collapsed and broke up in the early 1990s, 1990, 1991, that's when India found itself adrift. Indian politicians were used to having a big daddy. Now, what do we do? So that's why India started looking at the West. Yeah, because of the anglicized nature of the Indian elites and all that. Um, so for some time, the relationship was essentially non-existent. It was not great. The Russians caved into American pressure and declined to sell cryogenic engines, rocket engines to India, uh, and transfer the technology as was the agreement, and so on. But things stabilized after Mr. Putin came to power, and the relationship was again decent. Now, if you remember, in the 2010s, around 2015 or so, around that time, the Russians sold military equipment to Pakistan, helicopters and all, and they had these annual exercises between military exercises between Russia and Pakistan, the Druzhba exercises. What does Druzhba mean in Russian? It means friendship. So we have to remember these things. We have to remember. Look, no relationship is set in stone. If India becomes irrelevant, if India tilts very far westwards, then Russia will stop regarding India as a valuable partner. If Russia starts playing games with Pakistan, then India will stop regarding Russia as a valuable partner. I think there's a tremendous amount of potential in the relationship, and as we know, the US doesn't. The US has this now very clear policy of containing India. If you look at all the US actions in the past 3 years only, just the past 3 years, 3 years. Yeah, the coup against Imran Khan. Yeah, so regime change operation in Pakistan, and Pakistan once again becomes West Pakistan once again becomes a US vassal. Then the regime change in Bangladesh, so East Pakistan becomes a US vassal. Then Project K, Cookie Land for Christ, which is an attempt to it's a challenge to Indian sovereignty essentially in Manipur, and so much more. So if you look at all these actions the US has taken, they're aimed at containing India and destabilizing India, right? And the same thing is being done to Russia. So because of that shared issue, also India and Russia obviously are on a very um, convergent trajectory right now. So overall, India and Russia have see major nations, no territorial disputes, no major disputes of any kind. So natural partners. India and Russia are natural partners, and I expect this to continue. Despite whatever small hiccups may happen here or there, those may be temporary, right? So right now we are hearing rumors that Mr. Putin may not visit India as planned in by the end of this year. It's a possibility, but if that's the case, it may be a temporary thing because of various external factors. If that does happen, most likely he will visit, but we'll see. So overall, I see this as a very promising, very robust long-term relationship. India and Russia are natural partners, unlike Russia and China, or India and China, which are natural adversaries. Okay, MK says, in what ways are the US and the British Empire similar and different? Did the US make any serious attempts to make France its vassal like it did to the US Irish protest? You've been paying attention, have you, sir? Look, the Irish troubles is something the UK created itself. Okay, Ireland is under British occupation, and that's why you had troubles in Northern Ireland for decades, all the way from the mm, beginning of the 20th century. Because Ireland is under British occupation, they want to be free from the British. They have never liked the British. The British are foreigners for the Irish, right? So the troubles, the root cause of the troubles was British actions themselves. But it's very interesting, like I've said before, that the Northern Ireland insurgency ended just like that the moment Tony Blair made the UK an American vassal. Very interesting. Very interesting. Is it a coincidence? Really? Really? So yeah. So the UK becomes the US vassal, and the Irish troubles end just like that. No issues. All peaceful now. But I'll tell you, that undercurrent still simmers. The people of Northern Ireland are still under British occupation. It's British occupied Northern Ireland. Now, coming to your question, has the US made serious attempts to make France its vassal? France is a quasi vassal of the US. It is. It is. France is a member of NATO. Who owns NATO? It's the US that owns NATO, by the way. Okay. Or technically, it's a multilateral organism. Blah blah blah. Okay, go back to the third standard if that's how you see it. The US owns NATO. France is a member of NATO. If you are a member of NATO, you lose military sovereignty. You lose sovereignty over your armed forces. Because if you're a member of NATO, you have to put your armed forces at times under foreign command, under the command of a foreigner. Yeah. At least some portion of your armed forces at any given point in time are under the command of a foreigner if you're a member of NATO. So there you lose your military sovereignty. Secondly, the French are also are also members of the EU. Who owns the EU? It's once again the US. If you are a member of the EU, you don't have your own currency. You have to use the EU currency. So you lose economic sovereignty. Secondly, your borders are open. You've lost your territorial sovereignty. These are the hallmarks of a vassal nation. The only thing France is going for itself is the nuclear deterrent, which is entirely French, and other things as well. That's why France has a quasi-independent foreign policy and is less of a vassal than, let's say, Germany or any other EU or NATO nation. The most quasi independent of the nations is France, but it is still a US vassal. Okay, so yeah, how are the US and British Empire similar yet different? Very similar, very similar. But the US doesn't occupy other nations militarily except for a couple of cases. One case is Japan, another is South Korea, and Germany and Italy are also under some form of US occupation since 1945. But the British colonized extractively. So the British engaged in extractive colonization, whether it's India, which was the major target of extractive colonization, or African nations or wherever else. The US isn't uh, doesn't employ extractive colonization. It is a hegemonic empire, not an occupational empire, not an empire of occupation, and it extracts value from the world through its reserve currency, which is the US dollar. So they are similar and different in a variety of ways, but overall very similar. Same culture, same Anglo culture, and the US empire is an extension. It's a continuation of the British Empire. Okay, Varun Bajaj says, "What would India be like today if India hadn't lost territories like Pakistan and Bangladesh to British rule and partition? Also, were Afghanistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka part of India before the British?" This is the history question, not geopolitics question, but let's just briefly answer it. See, I would request you all that please look at the pinned comment. We are discussing geopolitics today. Now, if I start taking questions about other topics today, then well, it's disrespecting the audience, right? What would India be like today if we had not lost these territories? We would be a more multi-religious nation. Maybe we would be stronger if we had strong leaders, right? Um, Afghanistan was Gandhar, obviously part of India. Myanmar, it's questionable. During the British Raj, Myanmar was part of India. It was always part of the Indosphere. But was it part of Jambudvip? Probably not. I may be wrong, but I don't see it that way. Sri Lanka, well, Sri Lanka was always part of India overall. Okay, always different kingdoms in Sri Lanka, but Sri Lanka was part of the Chola Empire, for example, and it was also part of the Gupta Empire. So, two precedents over there. Naman Singh says, "Why don't our people support Indian products and apps? Make a world class product, make world class apps that are better than everything the others have to offer. People will automatically gravitate towards that." I'll give you an example. We had an Indian version of Twitter called Koo, right? I tried using it. It was super buggy. It was so hard to use. It was a pain to use it. You want an app that's a pleasure to use. If Indians make substandard apps and then they say that Indians should support Indian apps, well, it's not going to work that way. The market has its own dynamics, right? So if I agree that Indians should support Indian products and Indian apps, but very often, for example, there was this product called Micromax. They used to make phones. They were Chinese manufactured phones with an Indian brand put on them. So Indians take these shortcuts. Indians haven't invested in research and development and creating a proper ecosystem and products that are world class. So once India starts producing products that are world class, and we are fully capable of that, look at our defense equipment, which we manufacture, world class, better than world class. We have all of this, but the people who have money, the industrialists, well, they need to change their attitude and approach, and of course, startup people who are in startups who are manufacturing stuff, they need to manufacture world class products. The moment you have something that nobody in the world has of that, if you have something of that quality, obviously everybody will buy it. So don't force Indians to buy substandard products because they are Indian. Make the best products in the world, or even decent products. Then many Indians will just buy the decent product, even if something slightly superior exists elsewhere, because it's Indian. But don't manufacture bad products. That's what I would say. Okay. Uh, as per mathematics and physics, how do you estimate the range of an ICBM test? Okay, how there's an ICBM test, and how do you estimate the range? Well, I'll tell you how. Mathematics, okay, uh, and physics. So let us go to the map. Okay, here we have map. Yes, we can see map. So where is the place in Odisha? Odisha. That's this island, right? From which we launch. Is this the island? not Kanika. Okay, this one, Abdul Kalam Island. Typically, you launch missiles from there and do rocket tests from there. So let's say you launch something from here. We put a marker here, Abdul Kalam Island, and we do an ICBM test or some kind of test. And we so before the government of India does a test, it issues a notice to airmen, NOTAM. Okay, uh, and it says that no aircraft should fly in a certain part of the Indian Ocean region for on so and so date for so and so time, maybe 6 hours, maybe 3 hours, whatever it is. Uh, and that gives you an indication of the range of the test. So let's say we have something. So we have an upcoming test which is going to splash down somewhere here, about 4.8 or 5,000 kilometers. I'm not sure if it's that long. Maybe it is less than that. Around 4,000 something kilometers is the current NOTAM that we have issued. Um, so it would be an indicator that the Indian government military is expecting the missile to have at least maximum range of this much. So that tells you that the missile has a maximum range of 4,300 something kilometers. If that's the range, maybe we've given a no time of 5,000 kilometers, then we would estimate that the maximum range of this missile, as calculated, incorporating safety measures by the government and the military, is 5,000 kilometers. So that's just a straightforward assessment of what the range could be. But now understand this. See, missiles can be used in a variety of ways. A ballistic missile, it has a it has a parabolic path, standard projectile motion, which you will learn in your eighth standard or whatever physics. Parabolic path. It will take off. It will exit the atmosphere, then re-enter the atmosphere and hit the target at re-entry speeds, which is about 20 kilometers per second per hour. Second, yeah, around that sort of speed, 20-25 kilometers per second. Now, what sort of parabola is it? Is it a flat parabola? If it is a very flat parabola, it will never exit the atmosphere. If it's a very loopy parabola, it will go like hundreds of kilometers above the atmosphere and return. Well, that tells you what kind of range it has. So the range that the NOTAM tells you is an approximate range. It's not really a true indicator of the range of the missile. So what India generally does is it underreports the range of its missiles. So let's say we are doing a test of a missile and our NOTAM is 5,500 kilometers. So one could estimate that this missile has a 5,000 kilometer range. But maybe we don't want to show the world what the real range is. So we are creating a variant of the missile with less fuel. Maybe the actual range is 13,000 kilometers, but we've only put enough fuel in the missile for 5,500 kilometers. So that way you don't alarm certain nations who would then become the potential recipients of a package. Yeah, uh, that is the thing. So I think India has very smartly done this, been very smart about this. We always underreport. We generally underreport the true range of the missiles, so as to not alarm certain nations who anyway want to be alarmed, and so on. So that's how we do it. Ankita says, why was Alaska chosen for the Trump Putin meeting? Yes, why was Alaska? Now, first of all, do we know where Alaska is? Let us quickly visit Alaska and see where it is. So, we go north of India, straight north. We cross Mongolia and we come to Russia. Okay, this is Russia. This is Russia. You go eastwards, eastwards, eastwards. Then you have the Kamchatka Peninsula. You go further eastwards, and you have the Bering Strait, and you have two Diomede Islands here. Little Diomede is owned by the US, and Big Diomede is owned by Russia. And between, I mean, the two islands are about 40, I don't know, 4 kilometers apart. 4 kilometers apart, as you can see here. So that's the distance between Russia and the US. And I once had a comment a few years ago from a lady whose family was from one of these two islands. You know, uh, so that's the Bering Strait. And if you go further east from the Bering Strait, you reach Alaska. This is America's northernmost state. Straight lines, as you can see, that's the consequence of colonialism. colonization. And yeah, so this is the nation, the state of Alaska, America's northernmost state, and this was once a Russian territory. It was a Russian territory, and it was sold to the US for a certain amount of money. The Americans bought it. And at that time, it was considered by many Americans to be completely stupid that America bought this big territory from Russia by paying a lot of money. But today, it turns out it was a very valuable purchase and a very cheap purchase, because Alaska is full of oil and gas and all kinds of resources. So it's a territory that was formerly Russian. It still has possibly some Russian influence, culturally, religiously, whatever, and it's now an American territory. And it was acquired by America legally from Russia, right? So that's the shared history of Alaska between the two nations. So why was Alaska chosen for the Trump Putin meeting? Because it is something that both nations at some point in time had in common. It's also an example of a transfer of territory that happened legally without the use of force. So maybe Trump wanted to remind Mr. Putin that, if you want territory, you have to take it legally without using force. So it's a region that has multiple layers of meaning for both nations. Some people in Russia today may rue the fact that they sold Alaska to the US. They would have wanted to, perhaps, some people may imagine it would be so nice if Russia had this territory in North America, right? Um, so that's one layer of symbolism. Secondly, from the Americans, it's now American territory, but with a Russian influence, Russian past. So if both leaders meet there, and it's kind of equidistant in some ways from the main land masses of both nations, so it has multiple layers of meaning. So it made sense for Alaska to be chosen. I mean, it's far in the north of North America, an almost desolate land, very nice, very rich in resources and all, very small population. So yeah, people may ask themselves, why was this place chosen out of everything else? Why not Washington? Why not Moscow? Why not somewhere else? But it's got this very interesting history. It's very symbolic, and that's why Alaska was chosen. James says, if India is so good, why do Indians come to the UK? Yes. Why do Indians come to the UK? You see, today in the West, a lot of people complain. A lot of Westerners complain. Why do these shitty third world types, why do they come and pollute our land? Why do they come and live in our lands? Stay in your third world countries, right? If your country, your culture and everything is so nice, why do you come and live in the West? Go back to your countries. You see, it's not that simple, my dear James. You folks, you know what you did? You destroyed cultures, you destroyed civilizations. You took the world's, I'll take the example of India, the world's most prosperous entity, a nation. Wasn't a nation, it was a kingdom, empire, whatever. You took this place with the oldest civilization that the world knows of, and you destroyed it. You did not come to India for the sake of, uplifting the poor, downtrodden people of India because they were so backward, because we were so poor. You did not come to do social service. Columbus, why was he looking for India? For gold, right? He stumbled upon something else, but that was the intention. And why did the East India Company come to India? Why was it formed? It was a joint stock company, wasn't it? A lot of very rich people put money together, created stock, and they set up the East India Company to trade with India. Why? Why? To become richer, to extract something of value out of India. Eventually, because of the political situation in India at the time, no political unity and so on, the East India Company was able to take over India gradually, piece by piece. And they proceeded to destroy the country, deindustrialize the country. India was the world's first fully industrialized civilization. India accounted for a third of the entire world's GDP. And by the time the British left, what happened? India accounted for less than 2% of the world's GDP. What happened? The British systematically deindustrialized India. The British systematically starved India. The British systematically uh, conducted genocide. They imposed their language, their education system, their religion. They tried to destroy everything that India had. And by the time the British left, India's life expectancy was 31 years. Imagine that. That's what the British did. So these Indians who had been enslaved by the British for 2.5 centuries, they then acquired the slave mentality that the white man is best and the white lands are best. And India was a place of abject poverty. So they thought, okay, let's migrate to the land of the white man. Maybe we will have better lives there. So you folks came and destroyed everything, and then and took all the wealth away, enriched yourselves. So then your place becomes the place of riches and better lifestyle. So then people obviously will try their best to leave the country you destroyed. So that's why Indians come to the UK. Even today, India is suffering from the after effects of British occupation, 2.5 centuries. We are still suffering from that. We are still trying to uh, stand up on our 2 feet. We were on our knees for the longest time. We are now standing up slowly, gradually. It could be faster. Why is it not faster? Because of all the corruption and decay that you dumped into India. 1947 was a transfer of power from one set of crooks to another set of crooks. Your hand-picked crooks. And that's why the system in India was so bad. That's why you had Fabian socialism in India for decades. And so much more. I could go on, my friend. India used to be good. India was the greatest civilization of all. You folks destroyed it. And that's why Indians come to the UK. And Pakistanis. And Bangladeshis. It's called karma. And you are paying the price for that. I wish you all the best, sir. I mean, what I mean is I wish you karma. May you pay the price. Ansh says, Operation Sindoor 100 day analysis, please. It boosted Bharat's morale and deterred Pakistan, but they did give China a weapons test lab and signal India as a US adversary. Overall net positive thoughts. Okay, last question is, did it signal India as a US adversary? No. India was taking steps for self defense. Whatever India did was in self defense, right? If Pakistan has a terror factory next door, which is pushing in terrorists and killing Indians, we've got to do something about that. It's called self defense. That doesn't make India a US adversary. But if the US chooses to side with Pakistan, then the US is positioning itself as an Indian adversary. India attacking terror camps in Pakistan doesn't make India a US adversary. But we have to remember that the US has the track record of funding and financing Pakistani terrorism since at least essentially Christmas Day 1979, right? Osama bin Laden used to fight on the West. He was a Western creation. Yeah. So it's the US that has chosen to support Pakistan and thereby make India an adversary, thereby designate India as an adversary implicitly, right? So there you have that. Now, 100 days analysis has it been? Yeah, it's been three months plus. So yeah, it did boost Bharat's morale. It did hammer Pakistan, but it did not destroy Pakistan. Pakistan still exists. And now Trump is supporting Pakistan. He's investing in Pakistan. He is going to do his best to make Pakistan a very prosperous nation. Apparently, that's what Asim Munir is promising the people of Pakistan. The Pakistani dictator Asim Munir. So Trump is going to invest in Pakistan's so-called oil and gas sector. Trump is investing in Pakistan's rare earths minerals sector. Trump is investing in Pakistan's cryptocurrency market. And since Trump is so invested in Pakistan, it's possible that whatever deficiencies Pakistan's military may have, those may be covered up as soon as possible by the US. Possibly, maybe they will sell weapons to Pakistan. Who knows? We'll see about that. Um, so that's the situation. So the US is positioning India as an adversary now, or they are positioning themselves as an Indian adversary. We haven't done a thing. It's their choice. It's America's choice. Whatever they are doing. Did Operation Sindoor give China a weapons test lab? Well, the Chinese weapons that were tested in Operation Sindoor, which there were export versions of Chinese weapons. Those weren't the actual weapons that Chinese military uses. So there are two grades of weapons. Okay, if you're a weapons exporter, You will manufacture weapons for your own armed forces, which will be the best possible, but you will also put those weapons on the international market for whoever wants to buy them. And if there is a buyer, you're gonna export something called an export version, which is a slightly less capable version, so that if that weapon systems if that weapons system falls into the hands of somebody who's inimical to you, they will not be able to reverse engineer the full technology and understand your actual technological prowess. So you give export versions. So the Pakistanis used Chinese radars, they used Chinese missiles, and whatever else, and those and Chinese JF-17 fighter planes. Well, clearly the Chinese weapons didn't do well. That's clear. So it obviously will give China some kind of understanding of the abilities, capabilities of the Indian military, and it will also give China some data about the performance or non-performance of their export versions of the export versions of their weapons. So it's good for China, of course. So China would have been watching this with great interest, and the data that they would have received will be quite valuable to China. So the ideal outcome for India was to end the Pakistan threat once and for all. That did not happen because the Americans came in the way. Um, so overall, 100 days analysis, it was good. It boosted India's morale. It gave us it field tested, battle tested India's weapon systems. Now it's very clear that India has the world's best battle tested air defense system in the world, better than the Israeli Iron Dome, which performed differently against the Iranian ballistic and other missiles, right? So we have that. We have very, very dangerous weapons in our arsenal. So our Made in India initiative has been vindicated. Our weapons are terrific, but that's where we are. Ideally, we would have wanted to end the Pakistan threat once and for all, but did not happen. So, at the end of the day, Pakistan in a few months will be able to repair everything, maybe buy more weapons from whoever, China, US, wherever, and then we are back to square one. So, overall, we did not, honestly, to be very honest, we did not gain anything. We did not gain any territory. Uh, the damage done to Pakistan can be repaired. Obviously, the assets they lost will be costly, whether it is the Saab 2000 AWACS aircraft, at least a couple of those, whether it is the JF-17 or the five fighter planes that were shot down, the runways that were damaged, the hangars, the airports, the air bases that were damaged, those will be repaired. In a few months, Pakistan will be back to where it was. They will buy new radars. They'll get some more fighter planes. Maybe China will sell J-20s or whatever to Pakistan, which will give Pakistan an advantage over India. Overall, nothing much came out of it. Good, we taught Pakistan a lesson. A bunch of Pakistani terrorists died. Now the Pakistani terrorists know that they can be hit anytime. So overall, one of the outcomes was that India has now officially changed its military doctrine. Any terror attack emanating out of Pakistan will be treated as an act of war. So that's another positive. But overall, we have not we treated some symptoms, but we have not treated the root cause of the problem, which is the existence of Pakistan itself. So these are my thoughts. Okay, Bharatiya says, is it fair to say that it was always a US Russia fight with Ukraine as cannon fodder? Well, I've been saying that for the past 3 years, haven't I? It's a proxy war. It's a US initiated fight. Ukraine is the proxy, and the objective is to destroy Russia. Hopefully, I mean that's the maximum they can accomplish. They haven't been able to accomplish this, and Bharati says it's even more obvious after Trump Putin meet, as Zelensky was nowhere in the picture. Zelensky is a puppet. Zelensky is unconstitutionally the president of Ukraine right now. According to the Ukraine constitution, there was supposed to be an election last year, sometime in May or whenever it was, May, June, whatever, April, May, June. You can look up which month it was supposed to be. Of course, there is an emergency that Zelensky has imposed in Ukraine, and when there is an emergency, an election may not happen. But technically, there should have been an election. So he is the emergency president of Ukraine. Uh, According to the constitution, I'm not sure if it's perfectly constitutionally valid. And anyway, he is a puppet. Ukraine underwent a regime change operation in 2014. That's where all the trouble started. So Zelensky is a continuation of that artificial regime that was put in place in Ukraine by the West. So yeah, it's a proxy war. The objective is to destroy Russia or at least degrade Russia's military and economic capabilities. Hasn't worked out. The opposite has happened. So Ukraine is the proxy. The Ukrainian armed forces are the cannon fodder, and the West is going to fight this war as long as the last Ukrainian is willing to fight or is capable of fighting. So clearly, it's a fight between the U.S. and Russia, instigated by the U.S., not by Russia. The Russians had to do this, otherwise all the red lines were being crossed. So they had to do this. Actually, whatever the Russians did, they should have actually done it in 2014, not 2022. 2022 was a little late to do that because it gave the West a lot of time, ample time to arm Ukraine and to bolster Ukraine's military capabilities. Anyhow, okay, what next do we have? We have Siddhant Verma says Turkey is hostile towards Kurdish refugees, but they are settling millions of Circassians, Chechens inside their towns. Isn't it strange? Well, is it strange, really? Is it? Well, let me explain how I see this, okay? Turkey, map, map. Let's look at the map. Yes. Let me explain what the deal is with Turkey, okay? So, this is what Turkey is. Turkey, this large nation, reasonably large. Much of it is in Asia, Anatolia, and a little bit of it is in what used to be called Thrace, which is the European part of Turkey. Now, what's the history of Turkey? The history of this geographical region is that it used to be Greek. The whole of Anatolia was Greek. There was zero Turkish people there 1,000 years ago, let's say. Then the Turks. So when do the Turks start intruding into this geographical region? It's in the 1200s, mostly. Before that, there were no Turks there. The Turks, they lived in Central Asia. They were a Central Asian bunch of tribes, the Turkic tribes. Then something happened in the 1200s that shook up the whole of Central Asia. That was the rise of Shri Chinggis Khan. So the Turks were fleeing from Chinggis Khan's forces. So while fleeing from Genghis Khan, they entered Anatolia. They came down south between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and that's how they discovered Anatolia, and that's how they conquered and occupied Anatolia. Eventually, 1453, Constantinople falls, Byzantine Empire is dead, and the Ottoman Empire rises. That was the deal. So this is captured territory. It has never been Turkic territory. So that's why the Turks are super hostile against the natives of the territory, the real natives. So one of the native ethnicities, especially in eastern Turkey, is the Kurdish people. Who are the Kurdish people? They are an Indo-Iranian people. They speak an Iranic language. Do we know of any famous Kurds in history? Well, Saladin the Magnificent, or whatever he is, Saladin, right? The defender of he defended the Arab world, the Islamic world against the Crusaders, right? So he was a Kurd. So the Kurds, their homeland is split between Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. A significant amount of Turkey is actually Kurdistan, but the Turks have taken it over and they have been oppressing the Kurds for centuries. So the Kurds are actually natives of eastern Turkey, but they are essentially foreigners and second class citizens in their own land. So that's why Turkey is super hostile against the Kurds. And the Kurds have had a freedom movement, which the Turkish have designated as a terrorist movement. So that's why the Turks have been super hostile against the Kurds. But they're happy to bring in other foreigners like Chechens and Circassians, as long as it's not the native people of the actual native people, the actual indigenous people of the land. So kind of explains things. In short, in brief, that's what I can tell you. Rohan Allen says, would a fully marketed BRICS currency trigger World War III? It will trigger a massive retaliation, massive response from the US, because it will be a genuine challenge to the US dollar's supremacy and hegemony, right? The BRICS nations put together, they are a larger economic bloc than the G7 nations now. The G7 are all US vassals. US and its vassals. So BRICS is now a major economic bloc, and if the BRICS nations can actually somehow come together and actually decide to form a BRICS currency, that would be a major challenge to the supremacy of the US dollar, and that could completely shake up the American economy. Without the US dollar, the US economy is in shambles. It collapses. So fully a BRICS currency that if it is actually formed, created, and all the BRICS nations decide to exclusively use that, well, that will trigger an economic third world war for sure, and maybe something else. So yeah, that'll be a it'll be a calamity for the US, and the US will take very strong and harsh measures if this happens. Harsh Nayan says, why doesn't India mine its thorium reserves as it can be used as an alternative to the uranium 233 in nuclear energy program? Well, you see, India has a three-stage nuclear program, and um, before we can start using thorium, we need certain things to be there in place, a certain amount of uranium and so on. Without that, you can't really operationalize the thorium reactors. So that's why we are still stuck at the end of the first stage and the beginning of the second stage. We have the world's largest thorium reserves, no question about it. Uh, what about a fourth of the entire world's thorium reserves, mostly on the east coast of India, the monazite sands and so on. So we have that. All we need to do is to accelerate our nuclear reactor program and the thorium research program. Uh, Prime Minister Modi said a couple of days ago that we are now going to, go on mission mode and build more reactors and have a certain number of reactors by 2047. Um, I think the earlier India does that, the better it is, because the moment we can start operationalizing the thorium reserves, and start using those in reactors, well, we will have essentially an unlimited amount of energy, unlimited source of energy. So we need to go through the second stage of the nuclear program before we reach the third stage, which is thorium based reactors. So we are not there yet, unfortunately. So right now, the thorium mining will be pretty easy, I'm sure, but right now it will be of no use until we reach the third stage of the nuclear program. Premier League says Machiavellian. Why doesn't Russia or China? Why doesn't Russia or China give Iran nuclear weapons if the US can keep weapons of mass destructions in NATO countries also? Iran is a key ally for Russia and China. Well, the US keeps nuclear weapons in Pakistan. Pakistan, I am certain, doesn't have an indigenous nuclear weapons program. Most likely, those nuclear weapons, those nuclear warheads are American warheads. I have no evidence to back up this claim, but I am convinced that these are American nuclear warheads. And the American reaction to certain events in Operation Sindoor made it very clear that the US has very precious assets in Pakistan. Not just those F-16s and the technicians who babysit the F-16s, but something far more valuable than a bunch of 1980s F-16s. So now, coming back to your question, well, Iran is definitely a major ally of both Russia and China, and China has this 25-year strategic agreement with Tehran, in which China will invest about, I don't know, $500 billion. I don't know what the actual number was, but it's a massive investment in Iran, and Iran will in return sell very cheap energy to China. So it's a great deal that Chinese have with Iran. Now, if Iran falls, let's say, if there's a regime change in Iran, that's a significant setback to Russia as well as China. So neither nation, Russia or China, wants there to be a regime change in Tehran. They want the current government, the current regime, to continue, right? And Israel wants a regime change in Iran. The US wants a regime change in Tehran. Both of them, they want it. So what is the one thing that can prevent regime change? What's the one thing that can guarantee that a regime change operation won't happen? It's nuclear weapons. Look at North Korea, how secure they are, right? A very poor nation, but they are super secure because they have nuclear weapons. The US won't dare bother them. Won't dare cross any red lines with North Korea. So the question then is, so why doesn't Russia or China give Iran nuclear weapons? Well, one thing, Iran has its own nuclear program. It may not be a nuclear weapons program, but they have been trying to enrich uranium for the past, I don't know how many years, at least 15 years. Yeah. Um, and they probably may have enough enriched uranium today for a handful of nuclear warheads. They probably may have it. Uh, but are they afraid to declare themselves a nuclear power? Are they afraid to do a couple of tests? I'm not sure what it is. I am pretty sure that by now they would have at least enough 90% plus enriched uranium for a few nuclear weapons. That's number one. Secondly, Israel is a nuclear power, and it would not tolerate Iran becoming a nuclear weapons power. And if Russia, let's say Russia gives, let's say, 20 nuclear weapons to Iran, I think that will be seen as a major provocation by Israel as well as the US, and it may create complications for Russia possibly. The same goes for China. China is trying its best to not attract more US tariffs. It still wants to participate in the world economic order in a variety of ways, especially when it comes to trading with the EU nations and other things like that. And if China, let's say, supplies nuclear weapons to Iran, then it would make China a pariah, and all China's trade with the EU also will end, and it will face major consequences. So I think there are multiple hidden factors like these, hidden second and third order and fourth order effects that these nations don't want to bear. So that's most likely why these nations are not supplying Iran with nuclear weapons. Mr. Putin actually had offered to take all of Iran's fissile material and store it in Russia in case the West has a problem with Iran having highly enriched uranium. So actually, Mr. Putin was offering to do the reverse, not to give nuclear weapons, but to take away the fissile material. So clearly, there are these calculations at play over here. Right? Saithija Reddy says, "How do gas routes shape Europe?" I'm sorry, what? How do gas routes shape Europe? I'm not sure what the question means. See, Europe, it needs energy, right? And it used to import Russian gas. So those gas pipelines were either overland, some of them were overland, and some of them were undersea, like the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which was destroyed by the US. Well, allegedly. Allegedly. So these are the gas routes that Europe had, and they were supplying energy to Europe. Beyond that, I don't know how gas routes can shape a continent. I mean, an alleged continent. Europe is not really a continent, it's part of Eurasia, a minor part of Eurasia, but whatever. Gas routes don't shape a continent. The geography of a continent shapes the continent, unless it's something else you are meaning. Godliness says space war, AI, quantum computing, and biotech will shape the new realities of geopolitics and human thought for the foreseeable future. Hence, which three countries you feel will lead the way forward and why? Okay, like I've said so many times in the past 3 4 years, um, the two or three nations that will lead the world in space exploration in the 21st century will be the two or three nations that will decide and shape the destiny of the rest of humanity. So, a nation's space capabilities are a great indicator of its overall technological progress. Of course, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotech, these are all emerging technologies which are also like at the cutting edge of the technological realm. And all of these technologies have side effects, have a military dimension, which is why they are so important geopolitically. How? If you are a great space power, well, you can deploy weapons in space, weapons that can't be intercepted. That's one very easy example. Artificial intelligence. Well, if you are at the forefront of AI, then it gives you the kind of intelligence your adversary can't have, right? Instead of searching for talent, you just use AI to do all the analysis and make predictions, make forecasts, and determine what's the best strategy for so and so military campaign in a way that no human being can. And if you can equip your weapons with AI, well, it makes them also smart. So if your adversary doesn't have the AI capabilities that you have, then you have a clear advantage and you will win. Quantum computing, once again, encryption, and so much more. Biotechnology, well, you can decimate entire populations without firing a single bullet if you're biotechnology. So all of these technologies are obviously going to shape the new realities, like you say, goodness, of geopolitics and so on. Which three countries will lead the way forward? The US and China are obvious answers. Now, who else is there? Europe. Europe is a bunch of vassal nations. They don't really matter. Will it be Japan? Japan is a vassal, unfortunately. Is it South Korea? South Korea is a vassal, unfortunately. Australia. Australia is owned by the US. Who do we have? The two alternatives are India and Russia. So it's the US and China, and maybe India or Russia, or maybe both. We'll see. It all depends on so many factors. How does India approach this? Does India take this seriously? I think the government of India is taking these technologies very seriously, but will they be able to get the results? That's the question. For that, you need reforms in so many sectors. Shall I say it? Education, and you need, you know, uh, reforms in the sense that, you need to cut down the red tape, you need to cut down all the procedural nonsense, the BS, uh, end corruption. So many things you have to do. So will India be able to get it done? And Russia, I think it's lagging when it comes to AI. I don't see any AI coming out of Russia. They are obviously technologically very advanced in some technologies, like probably biotechnology. So I think it's the US, China, and one or both of Russia and India. Ajit Jha says, Mr. Modi finally spoke about demographic change in the East. Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad he did finally. He so now it's what he announced on the 15th of August from the Red Fort is that India is going to undertake a major demographic mission or initiative. And he said that the Guspetiye, the infiltrators, are a major threat to the country. Well, it's so good to hear this. Now we need to get rid of these infiltrators. We may have who knows, maybe 100 million infiltrators who are squatting in our territory. And he spoke about the East. So mainly it's Bangladesh, but it's also the infiltration that's coming in from Myanmar, right? The Kuki terrorists who are squatting in Manipur, they also need to be thrown out, right? So yeah, we have two major challenges. One is the illegal immigration that's coming in, infiltration that's coming from Bangladesh. The second is the illegal infiltration that's a consequence of Project K, Cookie Land for Christ. These two problems need to be addressed. And Mr. Modi did not name any nation, but it's pretty clear he was talking about both. So I'm hopeful that the government of India will take this very seriously as soon as possible and start taking action right away. Hopefully. So very pleased to hear what Mr. Modi had to say. I'm very pleased to hear that. Okay, Naman Singh says, based on rumors, do you think it's possible for the US deep state to change regime in India like Bangladesh and Pakistan? Also, you will avoid this, but every day there's a drama in India. How will we grow? You will avoid this, but every day there's a drama in India. How will we grow? It disturbs everyone. Are you talking about political dramas or something else? I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm not sure. The, Look, overall, there's drama in India. There's drama in India all the time. Indians keep arguing with each other. Indians keep fighting each other. There's always some political issue somewhere. Sometimes it is pigeon. Sometimes it is dog. Sometimes it is something. Right? Always focus on the insignificant things, and so that people. So there's all kinds of political issues in India. I will not comment on those. How will we grow? We can only grow if we are united. And the entire system is designed to divide us, to keep us divided. That's the problem that we are saddled with. This system that we have inherited from 1947, it's the worst possible system. But it's the system that has given us the leadership that we have today. So that's the conundrum. Now, based on the rumors, I don't know about the rumors, but do you think it's possible for the US deep state to change regime in India like Bangladesh and Pakistan? Well, they will try. They will try. They are trying various experiments. They're already allying with certain. They're already allegedly allying with some political parties in India. They are already clearly engaging in what they call subnational diplomacy, which means that you you try to create divisions in India. by allying with various local regional political parties and giving them special treatment and SOPs and benefits and whatnot, privileges, and then using that to create situations that are beneficial for US objectives in India. They are we know how much, well, you may not know it, but a tremendous amount of money has been flowing into India for Christian conversion activities, industrial scale demographic conversion activities in India coming from the US, possibly billions, maybe even trillions of dollars over many years to change the religion in India, convert people to Christianity, right? It's an industrial scale program. uh, so that, obviously, see, the thing about Christianity, like the Japanese have written about it and the Chinese have written about it, is that when people convert to this foreign religions, they somehow spontaneously develop extra territorial loyalties, not extraterrestrial ambitions. Extraterritorial loyalties, which means they start becoming loyal to foreign powers, not your own country. And so that's why conversion to this foreign religion is a very well, it helps you destroy a nation. Um, so they have the American deep state, let's say, is putting all the pieces in place in India to eventually someday effect a regime change operation. No question about it. The best thing for them is that Mr. Modi is not in power, and somebody who is about 1/10 as capable as Mr. Modi should be in power. Somebody who's an absolute idiot, hypothetically, hypothetical person, right? I mean, if you want to vassalize the nation, you want an idiot to rule the nation. Someone, an Indian version, let's say, of Zelensky, who will sell his country to foreign powers. That's what they want. So right now it is difficult. See, in 2024 elections, they tried to influence the course of the elections using propaganda, media, and all that. And it is alleged that various Indian media houses are also allegedly aligned with the with the US. So 24 they tried, maybe they will try in 29. Maybe they'll try before that. So yeah, it's a great outcome for the US if they can effect a regime change in India, just like what they did in Pakistan, East and West Pakistan. I mean, ideal outcome for them. Then India will be embraced wholeheartedly and completely vassalized, and it will be another East India Company kind of situation. So there you have it. Godliness says the swift expansion of the Chinese Navy is scary. Their one destroyer carries more than 100 missiles. 132 missile. No, 1 second. How much? 128 missiles. Yeah. So one Chinese destroyer carries more than 100 missiles, equal to 4 Indian destroyers. The real threat will always be China, and we need West, at least for now. For what? What will the West do? If there's a war between India and China, do you think the West will intervene? They'll be happy to see both countries bash each other's brains out. What will the West do? You think the West is friendly to India? The West wants India to fail. The West wants India to be balkanized. The West wants India's economy to crumble and crash and burn. And they want the same for China. If there is a conflict between India and China, the West will eat popcorn and throw fuel in the fire. What are you talking about, sir? It's not. Be a little more realistic, sir. That's what I would say. I agree that the swift expansion of the Chinese Navy is scary. I completely agree. That's something we have been witnessing since the 1990s. So, what have we done about it? It's not something that happened now, right? They've been slowly, steadily, gradually, slowly building their capacities, their capabilities. It's been a very long, arduous, slow process. They did not build up this naval might overnight. In the 1990s, the Americans used to laugh about the Chinese Navy. Today, they don't now laugh at all. They're scared, right? And yeah, you're right. One Chinese destroyer typically has VLS tubes. What, 128, I think. 128 VLS tubes, the big ones, the big destroyers, 128 VLS tubes. How many missiles do Indian destroyers carry? 16? 16 is it? Or is it 32? I think the most is 32. I don't think there's any 64 VLS destroyer in India. So what are we doing about it? That's my question. The Chinese Navy has been expanding since the 1990s. What have we been doing about it? How many more destroyers did we acquire in the past 10 years? How many submarines did we acquire in the past 10 years? If we do nothing about it, we can't blame the Chinese for it. The real strength, the only measure of the strength of a navy is the number of missiles they can deploy at sea on any given day, not the number of destroyers you have. Oh, we have these many destroyers. How many missiles can we deploy? So these are hard facts for the Indian government and the Indian Navy. They need to do something about this. The Chinese Navy may be stuck in the east because of the Taiwan issue, the South China Sea issue, and the threat that they perceive from Japan and South Korea and the US. But if they decide, the Chinese, to deploy one fourth of the navy to the Bay of Bengal, we'll be in so much trouble. You cannot imagine it. So India needs to do something about this. And if there is an issue, the West will not come to India's rescue. Please disabuse yourself of this notion. The West will eat popcorn and enjoy, and they will throw fuel on the fire. Okay, Deepak Tivatia says Bill Gates, big pharma, global war on public health, like COVID, inflated fear like swine flu in the past, and Rothschild global control financial. What's your question, sir? What is your question? Look, we know the US pharma industry is a parasitical industry. They don't want to cure anyone, they want lifelong patients, they want lifelong customers. The entire model is such that they want to hook everybody on pills. You go to the US and see what these people have in their in their bathroom, the mirror, the cabinet behind the mirror, bunch of bottle after bottle of pills. Every American takes like 10, 20 pills every day. Even healthy looking people, they take pills. For what? God only knows. You have this symptom, take that pill. It created side effects, take that pill. More side effects, take this one. They have hooked everybody on these drugs. And the US food industry and pharmaceutical industry complement each other. So they did this war on tobacco, which is so evil, right? Tobacco is very, we know that tobacco isn't good. So they've banned tobacco. I mean, tobacco is now considered to be a, well, not a very respectable thing to do, right? But if you eat their food, it's probably worse than consuming tobacco. The food itself over there is so bad. So the entire US economy is based on exploiting people, their own people. The highest obesity rates in the world. In the 1970s, nobody was obese. What happened? What happened after 1971? So they want to control the rest of the world in this manner. And that's why the Indian government is unwilling to accept US agricultural exports, which is one of the major bones of contention, because that way they will enslave India, and we don't want that. Shubham Kumbhakar says, let's assume the World War III ended without nukes. Excuse me, what? Let's read. Let's assume the World War III happens and it ends without a nuclear exchange. Can that lead to a one world government? All the wars in human history, human greed for power, all of this is leading to one world government. Do you think it's happening? Look, interesting question, by the way. See, human greed is endless. Human greed is endless. When a person tastes power, we don't know the full extent of our own human nature. We think we're all good people. But the moment you taste a bit of power, what is power? People obeying you without question, unquestioning obedience. Get this done, it'll be done. Wow, that's intoxicating. And you want to expand that. You want more and more people to obey you unquestioningly, right? Let's say you are an emperor. You are the head of an empire. You control, let's say, one third of the world. Imagine how intoxicating that is. But then once you are hooked to that, once you're addicted to that, you want more and more and more. It will never end. So eventually the objective of the great powers is to control the entire world and all the resources, and have all the people obeying them. That's what it is. So yeah, the objective of the West is a one world government. They want to control the entire world. They want the entire world to come under the control. That's essentially what one world government is. One world, one government. Now the question is, let's assume World War III ends without nukes. Okay, let's say there is a World War III in which all the major powers are all involved, and at the end of the day, when it's over, one power comes out of that standing, everybody else is gone, and nukes were not used, which means the world still exists, it's not been destroyed. Will it lead to a world one world, one government? Most likely. Most likely. Do I see it happening? Very unlikely. World War III will mean a nuclear exchange. Nobody will. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about World War III. It will inevitably lead to a nuclear exchange, a massive nuclear exchange. So there will be no world, no government. That's what will be the outcome. Dev says, SAR, your views on high powered demography task force. Exactly, that was what I was talking about. The high powered demography task force announced by Mr. Modi on the 15th of August. And he urged Indians to make our own jet engine, social media, etc. Well, this is something I have been speaking about for the past 4 years, since the day the Ask Abhijit show started, right? I've been speaking about that. I've been saying this is what we need in the country. So Mr. Modi has said this on the 15th of August from the ramparts of the Red Fort. I'm so happy to hear that. So a high-powered demography task force to get rid of all the foreign infiltrators squatting in our land. Well, thank you so much, Modi ji. Please get it done. Even if it takes a decade, get it done, because removing 100 million possibly infiltrators is not something you can do in a few weeks. Maybe a decade, maybe 2 decades. I don't care, as long as the process starts and it's done properly. Let's say in 2 decades, all the infiltrators are gone. That will be a huge relief for the country. So it's very good to hear the announcement of this initiative. Now we would like to see how it's executed. I hope it's executed well, and I hope that other institutions don't come and stand in the way. He urged Indians to make our own jet engine, social media. Well, once again, very good, very good thing to say. And look, Indians, when it comes to jet engines, the government has to be involved in that, because it's a tremendous amount of money that needs to be invested in making a jet engine. So what Indians can do, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you want to make a jet engine, you will be able to make a 20 kilonewton jet engine, which can be used for a drone perhaps. But to have a 100 jet engine, you will have to invest hundreds of millions, maybe hundreds of tens of billions of dollars. That is something only the government can do. So maybe it indicates that Mr. Modi is very, very, uh, he is determined that India will produce an indigenous jet engine. Well, that's brilliant. What else can we ask for? Social media. Well, I think entrepreneurs can come up with that. So overall, it was a very, very good speech, very positive speech. So many good things to hear, and one would like to see the execution of that. So overall, it was great. Okay. Backbencher Academy lover says, is Italy better for tourism or Norway? How is this a geopolitical question? I think it depends on you, whatever you like. Okay, but let's stick to geopolitics, please. Adi Purush says, in Punjab, 10th May noon, saw movement of tanks and armored vehicles via national highway toward borders, towards borders. Was there a plan of government of ground invasion, and Uncle Sam stopped us? It's possible, because the logical end point of a war is the achievement of your political objectives and national security objectives. That's the end point. That's the logical end point of a war. You don't start a war just to stop it without achieving the objectives. So if Uncle Sam had not stopped us, maybe we would have taken back POK. It's possible, or maybe even bifurcated Pakistan. So yeah, Uncle Sam stopped us. Trump stopped us. Otherwise, today would be a different situation. So it tells you who India's real adversaries are. I hope that people make a note of that. MK says, is the US the dangerous empire, given that it's okay with its own population taking GMOs, pharmaceuticals, narcotic drugs, demographic engineering to wipe its own religion in Europe through illegal immigration? Well, I just kind of spoke about this, but okay. Yeah, it's okay with its own population taking GMOs. It's ruining the health of its population. Its population is a set of bunch of 300 million guinea pigs, essentially, who are captive to the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, both of which are poisoning the people of the US. Every American knows this by now. That it's the food that's poisoning them, it's the pharmaceuticals that's poisoning them. And narcotics. In the US, everybody takes drugs at some point in their life. I'm not talking about drugs as in medicines. I'm talking about narcotics, cocainum, heroinum, cocaine, heroin, what crystal meth like Breaking Bad and whatnot. Everybody does drugs at some point in their life. How are drugs so readily available? The US says that it's got the best homeland security and best um police system in the world, police force. Then why are drugs so readily available at every street corner that 15-year-old kids can get can overdose on drugs? It's the world's most corrupt country, right? Demographic engineering to wipe Christianity out of Europe. Well, yeah, that's also happening. Yes. So yeah, when you are all powerful, you can do anything, and then one has to see whether the power is used for good or evil. And the power is not being used for very very good purposes right now, unfortunately. And that pattern has continued for a very long time. So you are right, sir. You are right. All empires are dangerous. No question. All empires are dangerous. If you fall afoul of an empire, you may have to pay very big price. Anand Singh says, "What's your view on Tejas Mk1A? Are they great jets that the IF can use? Is it really capable against the quantity of China?" Thank you. Okay, I don't know. I am not a defense expert, so I don't know how the Tejas Mark. See, right now, yeah, Mark 1A, right? But here's how I see the Tejas program. It is one step in a long process. Now we know how to manufacture our own fighter jets. The only missing component is a jet engine. So if you know how to manufacture I think it's a good. I don't know if it's a great fighter plane. I think it's a good fighter plane from everything I've seen. I'm not an illiterate when it comes to defense. Since I was like 3 years old, I've been as a kid I was obsessed with aircraft. I used to make my own, model aircrafts and all that. So and I have studied the history of war, so I have some understanding of aircraft, but I don't classify myself as a defense expert. But I think the Tejas is a good fighter plane. I'm not sure if it's great. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. But it's definitely a good fighter plane. Now, we're going to produce more versions, different versions of the Tejas. And the learnings we have incorporated from our experience in developing the Tejas fighter plane after all the trials and tests and trials, all those learnings are going to be incorporated into future fighter planes like the AMCA, like the potential TE twin engine deck based fighter and other fighter planes in the future. So it's a great learning experience. It's a good fighter plane, and that guarantees that the next iterations of the fighter planes we produce will be like excellent, increasingly better quality. So that's how I see the Tejas. I think it's a good fighter plane. I think it will be. It's definitely most likely better than the MiG 21. The MiG 21 took down an F-16, so that's a good comparison there, right? So I think the Tejas program is super valuable for India in so many different ways. AVM says it appears as if opposition in India is acting on cue on foreign agenda coherent with regime change operations. What can government do to contain this? Look, I don't comment about domestic political matters, but you have also a component of regime change operations that come from abroad. So I will not comment about any political party or internal politics. What can the government of India do to contain foreign agenda that about which is coherent with regime change operations? Yeah. So how does the government of India deal with that? Let's say you have the embassy and consulates of a very powerful, very major nation that are trying to further a regime change regime change operation agenda in India by, let's say, aligning hypothetically with various Indian regional parties or other opposition parties, potentially, hypothetically, completely allegedly. What do you do about that? Well, it depends, right? If that power is so powerful, then what do you do with that? So I think this is a matter of dealing with this issue at an internal political level, and that involves dealing with local politicians. Maybe you have a local politician, Mr. X or Mrs. X or whatever, Miss X, who is on the payroll allegedly, hypothetically, of a foreign power. How do you deal with them? Well, that's all internal politics. I'm sure there are ways and means of doing that. I mean, let's say you take 100 Indian politicians. I think it is pretty likely that more than 50 of them could potentially be corrupt people, right? Potentially, hypothetically. So if somebody is corrupt, I think you have a tremendous amount of leverage on them if they have intelligent corruption. So my point is, this is all politics. It's all dirty politics, and it can be dealt with. Anonymous scientist says, I joined a little late. What leverage does Russia have over the US? A larger nuclear arsenal, the largest territory in the world. Um, that's two very obvious examples. It has the upper hand in the Ukraine conflict. There is leverage. It has been able to withstand all the US sanctions and still grow its economy. Russia's economy is growing. Russia's economy is doing well. Its GDP is growing faster than the other European economies. The millions of sanctions the US has imposed on Russia have failed to destroy the Russian economy. It's been super resilient. Russia's industrial base is doing well. All of these factors are leverage against the US. When do you use leverage? In negotiations, right? So when Trump and Putin meet, Putin will say, look, Donald, I I currently occupy one fourth of Ukraine territory. Tomorrow I take more. So why should we fight? Do you want me to go and take more? Let's just end the fighting and give me half of Ukraine. That's leverage. What leverage does Trump have? He's already imposed all the sanctions. What more will he do? What leverage does he have? So these are examples of leverage that nations have, and Russia has plenty of leverage over the US right now. Russia is in a position of strength now. What leverage does the US have? Well, they own NATO, they own the EU, so that gives them leverage, and so on. Ritwik says, how was Sheikh Hasina actually removed? Was it because of students or some other power? How was Hasina beneficial for India? Can she or her kids come to power? Look, Sheikh Hasina was good for India because she ended Bangladesh's role as East Pakistan. For the longest time, when her predecessor Khaleda Zia was in power, Bangladesh was used by the ISI to train uh, terrorists who would then be infiltrated into India's Far East, into Assam, into various other parts of India, and they will wreak havoc. You had various separatist movements in India's Far East that were all nurtured in Bangladesh. Those militants were given training, they were given supplies, all of that in Bangladesh. So many of these things, activities were happening. And overall, Sheikh Hasina, Khaleda Zia's regime was extremely virulently aligned against India, with Pakistan, with everybody else, with whoever was anti-India. Now Sheikh Hasina comes to power and she changes the track entirely, and she ended all these. She destroyed. She had all these terrorist and separatist training camps dismantled, and all those people handed over, brought to justice, either incarcerated in Bangladesh or whoever India wanted was given to India. All of that ended, and whatever issues we had with Bangladesh, all of those were mostly resolved. All those enclaves and exclaves that we had, that issue was resolved. So many of these issues were resolved because of Sheikh Hasina's willingness to uh, to have a positive attitude and a good approach towards India. And obviously, that's not good if you are anti-India. If you want to contain India, that's why Sheikh Hasina was removed. How was she removed? It was not the goddamn students who removed Sheikh Hasina. Where are they today? If the students brought about a revolution, then they would be ruling the country today. It's some 89-year-old geezer who's running the country, Mohammed Yunus, right? And he himself is not ruling the country. He's just the puppet face. Who's ruling the country? It's the army. Why did Sheikh Hasina leave Bangladesh? Because the army gave her half an hour to leave. Leave in half an hour. Otherwise, we can't guarantee you security, which is a death threat. That's why she left. Where does the real power lie? Political power flows out of the barrel of a gun. It was the army that removed Sheikh Hasina. Norman Singh says, is to be TBC. To be clear, is regime change possible? It's possible. Everything is possible. That's why India has to be super careful. Saitija Reddy says, why is woke culture mostly American, not European? Well, the origins are in Europe. The origins are in Europe. You can trace back the origins back in time as far back you want, as far back as you want. You could trace it to the 1790s, possibly. You could trace it to 300 AD, roughly. You could trace it back to various eras. But let's talk about the 20th century. Okay, so there was this post-modernist movement in Europe. Uh, Jacques Derrida, Foucault, and various such so-called philosophers who wrote a lot of garbage that you can't understand, but it sounds very intellectual. And their position was that was that it was a neo-Marxist position essentially. Basically, to keep it very simple, it was a neo-Marxist position, and they brought in Marxism via the back door, and all of that was then propagated to the US, where uh, the US education system took that up. Postmodernism, various various disguised forms of Marxism, and all of that eventually transmorphed or transmogrified into what we now call woke culture. So its origins are European, but it's now mostly American. And now America is exporting it to other parts of the world, including back into Europe. Raghul says, why does Israel and the US fear Iran so much? Is Iran that powerful? How is Iran so advanced in missile technology and able to develop strong defense systems despite its deprived condition? Look, Persia has always been a major power, very ancient civilization, right? I don't know how many, maybe 5,000 years old, at least 3,000 years old. And they've always been very powerful. And historically, Persia always fought the West, never India. Never went eastwards, always fought the West. And that's history, that's old history. Today, Iran, well, they are resource rich, tremendous oil and gas supplies, yes, and good population, large population. And if a nation like that, with that large land mass, with tremendous oil and gas supplies, acquires nuclear weapons, it transforms into a beast. It can transform into a beast. It can wipe Pakistan off the map of the world if it wants to. It can also wipe Iran off the map of the world, Israel off the map of the world. And that's why um, Israel doesn't like Iran, fears Iran. And also because the Iranian regime since 1979 has been very strongly anti-Israel and anti-West. And they have said that Israel has no right to exist. That's what the Iranian government's position has been since 1979. So obviously Israel will take it seriously. And now if a nation that says you don't have the right to exist starts the process of developing nuclear weapons, you will take it hyper seriously. And that's the situation. Okay. And obviously Iran and the US since 79 have had a very fraught relationship. How did the 79 Islamic Revolution happen? By overthrowing a US puppet, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. So the US had a great situation in Persia, in Iran, and the 1979 revolution destroyed that. So the US lost control of Iran. And that's why they would like to regain control of Iran. And that's why they want to do a regime change operation, if possible, there. Hopefully that explains the situation. James says old European architecture much better than Indian. Well, you see, James, back when you were constructing those menhirs called Stonehenge, we had a fully metropolitan urbanized civilization with architecture that you cannot contemplate. Anyhow, I grant you permission to keep on believing what you wish to continue, James. Cheerio. Literally, Officer K says, why do so many American politicians donate to AIPAC? Shouldn't it be classified as a foreign entity? I would never imagine doing this to for another nation. Okay, listen. I am completely ignorant about these matters. Okay, let me proclaim my complete innocence on these matters. So let's find out what is AIPAC. What is it? Let's go to Google. American product, right? AIPAC. What is that? Yes, AIPAC. American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Oh, I didn't know. It's a pro-Israel lobbying group in the United States. Oh, ho, 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 ho. AIPAC works to influence US foreign policy, particularly regarding the relationship between the US and Israel. They advocate for policies that support Israel and work to strengthen the US Israel alliance. Detailed look. AIPAC lobbying. It's a major player in the Israel lobby in the US. The Israel lobby. Where have I heard this? John Mearsheimer somewhere? Okay. And it includes various groups and individuals who advocate for policies favorable to Israel. Well. It's considered to be one of the most influential lobbying groups in the US with a significant impact on US and Israel relations and broader US foreign policy. It's not a political action committee, but it does engage in political activity, including fundraising for. Okay, it's faced criticism for its influence in the role in shaping U.S. policy towards Israel. Some people argue that it prioritizes Israeli interests over U.S. foreign policy goals. Its stated focus is strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship, but it's also been criticized for supporting policies that consider harmful to Palestinian interests and so on. Oh wow! Okay, so that is the AIPC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And it looks like, from what literally Officer K is saying, it looks like many American politicians, so many of them, donate to the AIPAC. That's interesting. Why do they do that? Maybe the US. So the US is a Christian nation. Look, how do I see this? The US is a Christian nation, despite officially they may not have a religion, but they are a Christian nation. And Christianity has emerged from Judaism. So maybe these US politicians who may have these very conservative vote banks, etc., they may believe in Lord Jesus Christ and all. Maybe they may feel that, because it all came from Judaism, we should support the Holy Land and support an organization that works for better relations between the US and the Holy Land. Maybe that's the reason why US politicians donate to the AIPC. I can't think of any other reason. Yeah. Should it be classified as a foreign entity? Well, if it's incorporated in the US or whatever, if it's based in the US, maybe it's not a foreign entity, even if it lobbies for the cause of better relations with a foreign country. Yeah. Would India do this for another nation? No. No. But India is a civilization. The US is an artificial nation, by the way. True fact. India is a civilization, thousands of years old. We won't do that for anybody else. We have some self-respect. The US is an artificial nation, artificially constructed nation, constructed by a bunch of settler colonizers, right, who came from elsewhere. So they may have allegiances to other nations. That's the difference between the US and India. Very different kinds of nations. We, India, are a civilization state. The US is a settler colonial state. Very different situation, and that's why maybe it's possible over there for this sort of situation to arise. That's what I can say, sir. Okay. Sarthak Biswas says, what is our government or organizations in our country doing to absorb the Indian talent? What measures need to be taken compared to the West or China? First of all, make it super easy to do business in India. Cut down all the red tape. Secondly, end all the corruption. Launch a war on corruption, alleged corruption. Third, recognize merit in India. This reservations nonsense has to end at some point in time. Fourthly, reform the education system. Make it completely merit based, and make it an education system that nurtures, seeks out, identifies, and nurtures talent instead of doing the opposite. You do all of this, India will be transformed, unleashed, unshackled. Right? But it's easier said than done. The whole system allegedly runs on corruption and red tape and all that. So how do you do that? Yeah. Solo Leveling says, can India remove all illegal immigrants completely? Well, it's impossible to ever remove all illegal immigrants. But how about if we remove 95% of them at least? That can be done. Once we are done with 95%, then instead of, let's say, hypothetically 100 million, we'll only have 5 million. Then start the next phase of deporting 95% of those. You take it step by step. It's impossible to ever remove everything, all the cancer, but remove as much as you can. So I am pretty confident it can happen over the next 20 years. Dheeraj Kamath says, a new narrative about Modi, BJP having rigged elections is being perpetuated. Is there a regime change being attempted by the US? What are the chances of it succeeding, like in Pakistan or Bangladesh? Look, I have not heard of this narrative. Maybe there are whispers or maybe shouts of that somewhere within internal Indian politics. I don't comment about that. Could it have a US hand, very much, potentially, hypothetically. It's possible. It's possible. So, the objective, if such a thing is true, if let's say a foreign country wants to create this new narrative that Mr. Modi or the BJP allegedly, according to these foreigners, rigged elections. If so, by just repeating a lie over and over again and having that lie amplified by opposition allegedly politicians, hypothetically, and just keep on doing it over and over again, you can convince a lot of idiots in the country that it's true. Not just idiots, a lot of innocent people who don't understand these devious tactics. It's possible to convince a lot of innocent people that this is true by having this repeated in a chorus over and over again by various politicians, hypothetically, and having this amplified by various Indian media houses and foreign media houses. It can be done. So that would not lead to immediate regime change, but regime change could then be easier in maybe 5 or 10 years, maybe 5 years, maybe even 2 3 years. What are the chances of something like this succeeding, like in Pakistan or Bangladesh? The chances in India are lower than in Pakistan or Bangladesh. In Pakistan and Bangladesh, it's so easy. Just ask the army to do whatever you want, and it will be done. It happens overnight. In India, you have to use the system to do it. So it's more difficult in India. It takes longer time. It takes patience on the part of the foreign entity, but it's possible. It is possible. So that's why you see India is in a tight spot right now. All these methods will be used against us. The objective is to destroy India's potential. The objective is to bring to power some hypothetical politician that I'm not aware of, but somebody who will be incapable of running the country properly, and they will run the economy into the ground, like what Mr. Boris Yeltsin did to Russia and what Mr. Zelensky is doing to Ukraine, that sort of thing. Okay. Sai Teja Reddy says, do US tech giants threaten India's sovereignty? Not directly, but yeah, technological sovereignty for sure. So if the government of India decides that why do we need our own search engine? Why do we need our own AI? Let's just buy it from the US. Let's just use that. Well, that very seriously threatens India's technological sovereignty. So indirectly, yes, it does threaten India's sovereignty. Paid says, I recently heard from Mr. Pankaj Saran, ex-deputy NSA, on a podcast that Russia has used Pakistan against us in the past. Is it true? Well, of course. I spoke about this about an hour ago in this live stream. I'll just give you some examples. I'll not talk about Russia using Pakistan against us. I'll give you some examples. In around 2015, Russia sold a bunch of military helicopters to Pakistan. And around 2015 onwards, for a number of years, more than 5 6 years, 7 years possibly, Russia and Pakistan started having these annual military exercises together, where Russian troops and Pakistani troops would do military exercises together. These were called the Druzhba exercises. Druzhba means friendship in Russian. So that was there. And so on. Yeah, there could be more of these things. So that's been there. Russia and Pakistan have tangled together, flirted together in the past. You have to always be cognizant of these facts. You see, my point is this, my friends. This question, let me utilize it to make a bigger point. There are some Indians who imagine that some countries are our best friends. I'll not name the countries. There are some Indians who imagine that certain countries are our best friends, and they put those countries' flags on their social media profiles. Let me tell you something. Nobody is our friend. Okay, you will have nations aligning with us when it satisfies their interests. But the moment we are of no use, nobody will align with us. The only people who will stand with us are our own people, us Indians. Remember that. So stop worshipping certain countries. And I'm speaking about at least one country apart from Russia over here. Stop worshipping certain countries. Have some dignity and self-respect. Okay, Indians, enough of this. I'm just sick of this. Arun Kumar says, is a regime change possible in Iran? Major foreign polls have concluded that 90% of Iranian youngsters support the Islamic regime and consider themselves as religious. Okay, see, let me address the second part first. Major foreign polls have concluded something about the population of Iran. Did they come into Iran? Did they come to Iran and do a poll in the on the streets of Iran? No. So how have they concluded this? By polling a sample of what? Expats? They don't represent the actual Iranian population. So my question is, what was the methodology, the statistical methodology used in these polls? Which I am pretty sure will be very questionable. Anyhow, that's the second part. But the first part is regime change possible in Iran? It is possible. It is possible. Um, all you have to do, well, it's not some small all, it's a huge all. If the US or Israel or a combination of these two nations, they significantly degrade Iran's military capabilities and make the government very vulnerable in the sense that they cannot properly control their population. Then it's very easy to create revolts. See, Israel, for example, I'll give you an example. Israel consistently supports Azerbaijan in its conflict against Armenia. Why is that? So Israel supports Azerbaijan while India supports Armenia. We are on opposing sides, right? So why does Israel support Azerbaijan? Because there's a significant Azeri population in Iran, in the East Azerbaijan province, right? And Israel would like to someday incite a revolt there against the Iranian government. So if the government becomes weak, if the government seems shaky, then you could see potentially revolts rising up in Iran, because half the population of Iran is non-Persian. So there are multiple ways in which this can be done. If they assassinate various key figures in the government, in military, that also will make the government very unstable. There are so many ways in which this can be done. It's not easy, but it's possible. So regime change is indeed possible in Iran. And then if it's true that 90% of Iranians support the Islamic regime, then that could be a factor which would make regime change more difficult. So multiple factors come into this, but I'm not sure about these foreign polls. I'm not sure what methodology they use to conclude whatever they've concluded. Shivansh says, do you think that for an alien looking from the top, Russia would be the most powerful nation on the planet since it has the most land and hence most resources? Aliens are look, if aliens, extraterrestrials, can come all the way to the earth, it means they are way more intelligent than us, right? Like if the highest IQ a human can have is hypothetically 200, then maybe an alien has an average IQ of 2000 or 20,000. So for them to be looking at us and examining us is essentially like us examining a population of ants. Okay? So that's how they will look at it. Like a bunch of ants and different colonies of ants who seem to be competing for resources, and they seem to have some disputes. The ant colonies have that. So how do humans conclude which ant species is more powerful? One factor you will see is how big is the colony, how much territory do they control, and resources. Secondly, what are the weapons they have, which is like how the pincers that they have and whatnot, what kind of chemical uh, secretions do they have, and so on. So yeah, if you think of it from that perspective, they may perhaps conclude that Russia has the biggest land resources, but the Americans are far more poisonous possibly than Russia. But the Russians have the biggest claws or mandibles because they have more nuclear weapons than the Americans. So for an alien looking from top, I think Russia and the US will be the most powerful nations. Yeah, maybe Russia, perhaps, maybe. But if they then look at the details, they will say that the Americans, those ants, they control much of the world's trade routes and all that. So maybe that makes them more powerful. So maybe they will conclude that Russia, yeah, aliens are obviously more intelligent than us. So they will conclude the US is more powerful, most likely. All right. But very interesting thought experiment you're giving here. Very interesting Gedanken experiment. And that's about it. Young Sonic, thank you so much, sir, ma'am. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So we are at the end of okay, there's one more question. So please stop asking questions because I'm going to end after this one. Rajat Chatterjee says some stats are saying that Russia lost 1 million soldiers in the war so far. As per the Western media, as per my analysis, what's the real number of soldiers they've lost? I have absolutely no way of telling how many soldiers Russia has lost because I don't have my eyes and ears on the ground in Ukraine or in Russia. But with that being said, let me say this: you can't trust the Western media. The Western look, media is just propaganda today. Media in the past, theoretically, it was supposed to report the truth, but today media is the most powerful source of propaganda, of creating narratives, of perpetuating false narratives. So the Western media, we know it lies. They consistently lie about us. So obviously, they're also lying about this matter. Um, they have been saying Russia has been losing millions of soldiers since 2022. I remember Ursula von der Leyen. She once said this, and it came out all over Twitter, that the video that Ukraine had lost, I don't know, 300,000 or something soldiers, and then the video was deleted. But it's never deleted, right? So the truth is that Ukraine has lost far more soldiers, most likely. Most likely, I don't know if Russia has lost 1 million soldiers. If that was the case, then Mr. Putin's popularity would certainly go down. If, I mean, 1 million is a large number for even India. 1 million is a huge number even for India. So I think you have to take these claims with more than a grain of salt, maybe a spoonful of salt. I don't think Russia has lost 1 million soldiers. Maybe, I don't think they've even lost as many soldiers as Ukraine. They definitely would have lost soldiers, but nothing like what the West is claiming. So my perspective is that I don't know how many soldiers either side has lost, but I don't trust the Western media. If they are giving a certain number, we should maybe divide by 10, at least divide by 5, at least divide by 2, or whatever you want to do. That's up to you. So my main point is I don't trust these numbers, not at all. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's live stream. Thank you so much, everybody, for all the questions. I really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed this. And we'll keep doing this next week. So, next week, we will do one live stream about history, in which I will take questions from the comments. And the second live stream will be about geopolitics, which will be a super chat live stream. Thank you so much. And I will see you next week. Take care. Keep asking questions. Keep raising your standards. And I'll see you, if you choose to, tomorrow, 6 p.m. All right. Good night. Good day. Take care. Bye-bye.